Welcome back to 10-Minute Prophecy, where we go through the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation in bite-sized chunks. We hope that this journey through Bible prophecy has been enlightening, whether you are new to prophecy or have studied prophecy in the past. As always, if you haven't seen the previous presentations, please watch them as each prophecy builds on the others. We are going to continue on Daniel 11. We hope that you are excited to continue on this journey and see how God predicted the world events precisely and accurately all the way to our time. Like we said previously, this prophecy has very few symbolisms and can be titled the literal prophecy because of this. Here is another reminder that the identity of the king of the north and the king of the south changes because they represent certain kingdoms and the leaders that represent them. And then at the end of the chapter, it will also include philosophies with the kingdom's powers. This will be apparent in the context as we go along. So last time we left off at verse 10, and will now continue on in verse 11. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. Ptolemy Philopator became king of Egypt after his father Euergetes, and took the throne around the same time Antiochus Magnus succeeded his brother as king of Syria. Ptolemy was known for his indulgent and immoral lifestyle, but he was eventually stirred to action when Antiochus threatened to invade Egypt. Angered by his losses and the looming danger, Ptolemy gathered a large army and marched out of Egypt to confront the Syrian king, as the Bible predicted that he would move with choler. Antiochus also assembled a massive army which included 62,000 foot soldiers, 6,000 horsemen, and 102 elephants. However, in the ensuing battle, Antiochus was defeated, fulfilling the prophecy that his army would fall into the hands of the king of the south. Antiochus lost 10,000 foot soldiers, 3,000 horsemen, and had over 4,000 men captured. In contrast, Ptolemy's army suffered fewer losses, with 700 cavalry and about 1,400 infantry killed. Verse 12 continues the narrative with, "And when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it." Ptolemy lacked the wisdom to capitalize on his victory. Had he pursued his success, he could have likely taken control of Antiochus's entire kingdom. However, instead of acting decisively, he settled for making a few threats before seeking peace, allowing himself to indulge in a life of unchecked pleasure. Though he had defeated his enemies, he became a victim of his own vices, neglecting the opportunity to build a great reputation and instead wasting his time on feasting and immoral behavior. His arrogance grew after his victory, but it didn't strengthen his position. In fact, his actions caused his own people to rebel. His pride was especially evident in his dealings with the Jews. When he visited Jerusalem, he offered sacrifices and insisted on entering the most holy place in the temple, which was against Jewish law. Although he was eventually prevented from doing so, his anger against the Jews led him to launch a brutal persecution. In Alexandria, where Jews had lived peacefully since the time of Alexander and enjoyed many rights, between 40,000, according to Eusebius, and 60,000, according to Jerome, were killed during this persecution, as was predicted, but it would not help strengthen his kingdom. These events, along with the rebellion in Egypt, weakened Ptolemy's rule, nearly leading to the downfall of his kingdom. Verse 13 says, "For the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches." The events predicted in this verse were to happen after certain years. The peace between Ptolemy Philopator and Antiochus lasted for 14 years. During this time, Ptolemy died from overindulgence and was succeeded by his young son Ptolemy Epiphanes, who was only 4 or 5 years old. Meanwhile, Antiochus had dealt with rebellions in his kingdom and brought the eastern regions back under control, leaving him free to pursue new ventures. Seeing the young king on Egypt's throne, Antiochus saw an opportunity to expand his empire. He gathered a massive army, larger than before, bolstered by the wealth and forces he had gained in his eastern campaigns, and marched against Egypt expecting an easy victory over the child king. How this played out will soon be revealed, as new complexities and players enter the scene of these kingdoms. Verse 14 states, "And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall." History records that Antiochus wasn't the only one to rise against the young Ptolemy. Agathocles, Ptolemy's prime minister, who was effectively ruling Egypt in his place, became so corrupt and arrogant that the provinces under Egypt rebelled. Egypt itself was thrown into turmoil, and the people of Alexandria rose up, putting Agathocles, his sister, his mother, and their allies to death. Meanwhile, Philip, the king of Macedon, made an agreement with Antiochus to divide Ptolemy's kingdom, each planning to take the territories closest to them. This fulfilled the prophecy about those rising against the king of the south. A new power then entered the scene. The Romans, described as the robbers of your people or the breakers of your people. Rome, once small and weak, had grown rapidly into a powerful force, cautiously testing its strength. Eventually, confident in its power, Rome began to appear on the world stage. From here, Rome would play a dominant role in history, influencing nations for centuries, even till this modern age. This power is described as a little horn that grew to be exceedingly great in Daniel chapter 7 and 8, and the phrase "to establish the vision" refers to these chapters. The phrase "but they shall fall" points forward to the prophetic prediction of the fall of this power. Going on, Rome soon intervened in the conflict and decided to protect the young king of Egypt from the plans of Antiochus and Philip. This started one of many of Rome's first significant actions in the affairs of Syria and Egypt, starting around 200 BC. Although Antiochus and Philip had previously supported Ptolemy Philopator as soon as he died and left a young heir, they conspired to overthrow the child and divide his kingdom. Philip was promised Egypt, Caria, Libya, and Cyrenaica, while Antiochus would take the rest. Antiochus swiftly invaded Syria and Palestine, conquering the provinces in just 2 campaigns. Their actions were so brazen and unjust, and though their crimes appeared unchecked, Rome rose against them, ultimately leading to the downfall of Philip and Antiochus, leaving their kingdoms in ruins. Going to verse 15, we find, "So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount, and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand." In history, we find that the Roman Senate entrusted the education of the young king of Egypt to Monsieur Aemilius Lepidus, who then appointed Aristomenes, a seasoned minister, as the king's guardian. Aristomenes' first move was to defend against the impending invasion by the allied kings, Philip and Antiochus. To strengthen the army, he sent Scopas, a renowned general from Aetolia serving Egypt, to his homeland to recruit reinforcements. With his newly assembled army, Scopas marched into Palestine and Coele-Syria, bringing all of Judea under Egyptian control, while Antiochus was distracted by a war in Asia Minor with Attalus. This set the stage for the fulfillment of prophecy. After being ordered by the Romans to abandon his war with Attalus, Antiochus quickly moved to reclaim Palestine and Coele-Syria from Egypt. Scopas was sent to stop him, but their armies clashed near the source of the Jordan River, where Scopas was defeated and forced to retreat to Sidon. Despite being one of the most fortified cities of the time, Sidon fell under siege. 3 of Egypt's best generals were sent to relieve the siege, but they failed. With food supplies running out, Scopas was left with no choice but to surrender, accepting the humiliating terms of sparing only his life and that of his 10,000 men, who were allowed to leave empty-handed. This marked the fall of Sidon and other fortified cities to the king of the north, Antiochus. It also highlighted the failure of the forces Egypt had trusted, including Scopas and his Aetolian troops. Verse 16 we see, "But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed." Although Egypt couldn't withstand Antiochus, the king of the north, he couldn't stand against the Romans, who were now rising in power. No kingdom could resist Rome any longer. In 65 BC, Pompey conquered Syria, removing Antiochus Asiaticus and making Syria a Roman province. Rome also became involved with the Jewish people in 161 BC through an alliance, marking its significant role in biblical prophecy. However, it didn't gain full control over Judea until 63 BC. This happened after Pompey returned from his campaign against Mithridates, king of Pontus. At that time, two rivals, Hyrcanus and Aristobulus, were fighting for the crown of Judea. Their dispute was brought before Pompey, who recognized the injustice of Aristobulus's claims. Still, Pompey postponed his decision until after his planned expedition to Arabia, promising to settle the matter upon his return. Aristobulus, sensing Pompey's true intentions, hurried back to Judea, gathered his forces, and prepared to defend his crown. Pompey pursued him, and as he neared Jerusalem, Aristobulus attempted to resolve the conflict by offering total submission and a large sum of money. Pompey accepted the offer and sent his general Gabinius to collect the payment. However, when Gabinius arrived in Jerusalem, he found the gates shut and was told from the city walls that they would not honor the agreement. Furious at being deceived, Pompey imprisoned Aristobulus and marched on Jerusalem with his army. Aristobulus's supporters wanted to defend the city, while Hyrcanus's supporters, who were more numerous, opened the gates to Pompey. Aristobulus's forces retreated to the Temple Mount, prepared to make their last stand. After a 3-month siege, a breach was made in the wall, and Pompey's troops stormed the temple, killing 12,000 people. The historian notes that during the chaos, the priests continued performing their religious duties, undisturbed by the slaughter around them, even as their own blood mixed with that of their sacrifices. After ending the war, Pompey destroyed Jerusalem's walls, transferred several cities from Judean to Syrian control, and imposed taxes on the Jews. For the first time, Jerusalem was under Roman control, a power that would dominate the region and eventually destroy it, as mentioned in prophecy. Now we enter verse 17, where it says, "He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom." In the previous verses we found that Rome had already conquered Syria, Judea, Macedon, and Thrace. The only part of Alexander's empire that remained unconquered was Egypt, which Rome now aimed to take. Ptolemy Auletes, the king of Egypt, died in 51 BC. He left the kingdom to his children, Ptolemy and Cleopatra, with the condition that they marry and rule together. Because they were both young, they were placed under the guardianship of the Romans. The Roman Senate accepted this and appointed Pompey as their guardian. Soon after, a civil war erupted between Pompey and Caesar, culminating in the famous Battle of Pharsalia. Defeated, Pompey fled to Egypt, but before Caesar arrived to pursue him, Pompey was murdered by Ptolemy, the young king of Egypt. Caesar, taking Pompey's place as guardian of Ptolemy and Cleopatra, found Egypt in turmoil. Ptolemy and Cleopatra were at odds, and Cleopatra had been removed from power. Despite his small force of 800 cavalry and 3,200 infantry, Caesar landed in Alexandria, determined to resolve their dispute. However, as tensions escalated, he realized his forces were too few and sent for reinforcements from Asia. Caesar then ordered Ptolemy and Cleopatra to disband their armies and meet with him for a settlement. The Egyptians, offended by Caesar's tone, rebelled. Caesar argued that he had the right to act as their guardian, according to their father's will, but the Egyptians weren't convinced. Cleopatra, knowing Caesar's weakness for beauty, devised a plan. She had herself wrapped in a bundle of clothes and secretly brought to Caesar's quarters by her servant. When unwrapped, Cleopatra stood before Caesar, and he was instantly captivated. Eventually, Caesar ruled that Cleopatra and Ptolemy should share the throne as their father intended. However, Pothinus, the chief minister who had helped remove Cleopatra, feared her return to power. He spread rumors that Caesar planned to make her the sole ruler, leading to open rebellion. Achillas, with 20,000 men, attacked Caesar in Alexandria, but Caesar cleverly used the city's streets to defend against the attack. When the Egyptians tried to destroy his fleet, Caesar burned theirs in retaliation, and the fire spread, tragically destroying the famous library of Alexandria. As the situation worsened, Caesar called for help from nearby regions. A fleet arrived from Asia Minor, and Mithridates brought an army from Syria and Cilicia. Antipater, the Idumean, with 3,000 Jews, joined them, allowing the army to pass through the strategic passes into Egypt. This cooperation was crucial to Caesar's success. A decisive battle was fought near the Nile, and Caesar emerged victorious. Ptolemy drowned while trying to escape, and Egypt submitted to Caesar in 47 BC. Rome had now absorbed the entire former kingdom of Alexander. The upright ones mentioned in the prophecy likely refer to the Jews, whose assistance was vital to Caesar's victory. Without their support, Caesar would have failed. The phrase, "the daughter of women corrupting her," refers to Cleopatra and her relationship with Caesar. He was captivated by her, fathered a son with her, and extended his campaign in Egypt longer than necessary, indulging in feasts and festivities with her. However, as predicted, Cleopatra did not remain loyal to Caesar. Later, she aligned herself with Antony, who opposed Rome under Augustus Caesar. Did you notice the detail and the plain language in which Daniel 11 discusses the intricate details of the kingdoms? Doesn't studying the prophecies this way make you want to know more? Well, this concludes our time together. Join us for another exciting session as we continue to discuss Daniel chapter 11. Please remember to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this series so far, or have any questions, please comment below. Hope to see you soon.